If you're here because you've been researching tiny homes, trying to figure out how to make a small space actually livable, you're in the right place. Figuring out how to live tiny isn't difficult. People do it every day, just not in the way we usually imagine it. Today, I want to show you how the way people live tiny in a dense urban environment can actually teach us how to design a tiny home in the woods. So this idea started a few days ago. We were walking through a more urban part of Austin, the kind of place where apartments sit above restaurants, cafes, rooftop bars. It's full of life, it's full of energy, and I realized I could never live in a place like that. As an introvert, it would overwhelm me. But I also understand why some people feel alive in that environment. And then something clicked. Urban apartments and tiny homes actually solve the same basic problem. They give you just enough for living, sleep, cook, clean, and everything else, it happens outside. For extroverts in the city, that outside is people and activity. For introverts in the woods, it's quiet and nature. Same needs, different world. And if you're exploring tiny homes for yourself, this is where things get practical. Urban apartments have already solved many of the challenges tiny homes struggle with. Daylight, proportion, even storage. So let's start with one and see where it takes us. This is a real 500 square foot studio apartment that I just randomly found on the internet searching for apartments in New York City. This one's defined by an entry foyer, a compact kitchen, and a bathroom core along one wall. And then a single main room for everything else. This is where you do your living, your sleeping, your working, and it's all oriented toward one window, connecting you to the outside. It's compact, it's efficient, it's intentional, because every inch is doing something. So I'm going to just trace this plan almost exactly and see what would happen if we lifted the logic of a New York apartment, but then set it down somewhere in the woods. So I started by sketching the apartment layout, 1-to-1. But the moment you put this plan in a rural context, the conditions shift. In the apartment, you walk in from a hallway surrounded by neighbors. In the woods, you walk in from the outdoors, surrounded by trees. So I added the small little covered entry, which is just a quiet pause before you step inside. Once I start looking at the elevation of this, here's another advantage we have. Out here, we're not pressed up against neighbors. So I added a window along the side wall to bring in more daylight. And later, when we do the virtual walkthrough, you'll really see how much of an impact this one little change makes. Another advantage? You have no one living above you. So I just took that advantage and raised the roof a bit. Enough to make the room feel taller and to also maybe even create some storage shelves along the top of the core wall. But the rest, it stays simple. Same footprint, same organization, just oriented towards the landscape. Now, as we get into the model and we start seeing things in 3D, this is where it's going to really start coming to life. And you'll start seeing the difference between a New York City apartment and a tiny home in the woods. So in the model, I'm keeping the plumbing core exactly where it was in the apartment because honestly, that efficiency still matters. It's the backbone of the plan. And in the real world, if you're building this for yourself, these small moves can save you money and a lot of headaches down the road. But in the apartment, this room it looks outwards towards activity. In the woods, it still looks outward, but towards nature instead. Movement replaced with stillness. Noise replaced with quiet. And here's where we really start taking advantage of the fact that there are no neighbors. I'm designing the roof to have some large overhangs and have just a steep enough slope to give us a lot of height inside the space. Because of that extra height and because of the fact that we have no neighbors, I'm also adding in the windows on the sidewalls. These little moves are going to bring in so much daylight into the space and welcome nature so that everything's connected from the indoor to the outdoors, no matter where you are in the building. Populating it with furniture is very intentional. We're trying to keep it as minimal but still efficient as possible. You're going to have a single couch and a wall with shelving and your entertainment. And the bed itself is going to just be a Murphy bed. This isn't new technology. This has been around forever. But you don't need to take up all the space in your room for sleeping when you're only sleeping in it for a portion of the day. We're going to add a kitchen countertop with just enough, a refrigerator, a cooktop, and a sink. Just enough to kind of live throughout the space. Because really what a tiny home isn't a place where you're going to be spending all your time. It's the place where you come back to and reset. Everything else, your life, day to day, is probably happening outside. And that's kind of the point of these. Now, when I start looking at the materials and the structure, I really wanted to express the structural components here. So I made sure I modeled in what the wood beams would be like. But when I looked at the materials, I wanted the exterior to have a balance of natural wood with this crisp white structure. Almost like the building is showing the truth of how it's put together. And on the inside, the surfaces, they're bright and white. This is a simple way to make a small space feel larger without even adding a single square foot. So in your tiny home, make it light and bright. It's going to feel bigger already. So, when you step back, tiny living has always been part of human life, in cities and in nature. It's really just a place to sleep, a place to clean up, and a place to reset. Everything else happens outside, whether that's in society or in nature. In Manhattan, that outside, it's energy, people, movement, connection. In the woods, that outside, it's quiet, trees, horizon, reflection. Same square footage, same needs, just a different meaning. The home doesn't define the life. I think the world outside of it does. But I'm curious, what aspects matter most to you in a tiny home? Or how would you design a space like this? Let me know in the comments. I genuinely love to hear your ideas. And if you want to explore more calm design, small spaces, and thoughtful architecture, I make videos like this every week, and I'd love to have you here. Thanks for coming along with me. I'd love to see you in the next one. So stay curious and design with intent.